All right, so everyone, during class today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using our cameras in manual mode to shoot at different ISOs. So I just want to go over and kind of demonstrate how you change the ISO settings on these cameras. And the first thing, like I said, you're going to do is you're going to put it in manual mode. You'll flick the camera on. You'll need to make sure if you're using the Nikon to rotate the lens so you can actually shoot photos. And again, on the manual mode settings, you'll see all of our different camera settings. So over here on the left, you have shutter speed. You change that by just rotating the dial at the top without pushing anything. You'll see as I move it up, it increases the shutter speed. And as I move it down, it decreases the shutter speed. Now, as I change the shutter speed, you'll see my exposure settings over here in the middle change as well. So for what we're going to do during class today, we are going to be putting our shutter speed at 1/60, and we're just going to leave it like that. The next thing we're going to do is change our aperture, and we're going to use the smallest aperture we can grab. And pro tip, if your menu ever goes away, just press the shutter down halfway, and that'll boot it back up. And to change the aperture, what you do is you hold down the exposure settings, and you just slide the dial. Now sliding it to the right will make the aperture smaller. And you can see here as I make the aperture smaller, it's making the exposure darker as well, because when you close the aperture, you're letting less light into the camera. So for today's class, again, if you're on the Nikon, hold down the aperture button, slide that all the way over to the left to make our camera as open as possible. Because the only thing that we're going to be changing during class today is the ISO. Now to change the ISO, you're going to go into your menu, at least on the Nikon, click where it says ISO sensitivity settings, and you're going to make sure ISO sensitivity control is off. Now, your camera might have been recently reset, so if I go and reset the camera right now, by default, the ISO sensitivity settings will be set to auto. So again, we want to turn that off so we actually have control over it. And like I said, we're going to be taking 3 photos during class today. There's 3. So the first photo you're going to be taking at 400 ISO. And one thing to note is that if I set the ISO to 400 and I go back into the shooting menu, you can see here I'm getting a photo that's going to be very underexposed. After you take that photo at 400 ISO, and you can see here it's a fairly dark photo, you're going to go back into your menu settings, back into ISO sensitivity, and you're going to raise it up this time to 3200, kind of a medium ISO. Again, same thing, you're going to take a photo. You're going to notice that this one is a little bit brighter. Again, if I go back into my camera settings, you actually see my exposure is a little bit more towards the middle. And then finally, once you do that, you'll go back into your menu, back into ISO sensitivity settings, and this time you'll raise it up to 25600. 2,500, I can't speak, I don't know numbers, don't blame me. And this is where you'll take your last photo. And if you see here, now this photo is set to be way overexposed because our ISO is so high. If I take a picture, and I kind of just go through and quickly compare them, I know it's a little bit hard to see on this camera. But what you should see is between the 3 images, the one at the low ISO is going to be really dark. The one at that kind of medium ISO is going to be a little bit brighter. And the one at the highest ISO is going to be super bright. It's even kind of blowing out my camera lens here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to show you how to do the Canons next. So let me do that real quick. Boom, now I have a Canon camera. So same thing on this camera. If we open it up, we can see our shutter speed, our aperture, and our ISO. And again, changing these settings is very similar between the 2 cameras. So if you slide up the dial over here, it'll change the shutter speed. So again, we're going to use 1/60. To change the aperture, same thing. You hold your exposure button. And again, we're just going to set this to as low as it can go. And then finally, to change your ISO settings, you actually need to go into the menu. On the Canon cameras, it's a little bit easier. You just hold down the ISO button, and you can change the ISO. So what you'll notice is that we don't have the 25,000 ISO that's on the Nikon cameras. The Canons have a little bit less. But same thing, you're going to shoot at the same ISOs. So I'll first set it, in this case, to 200. Boop. I'll click, take a picture. Again, you can see it's a very dark picture. If I go and raise up the ISO, I'm gonna do a middle value. So in this case, I'll recommend like 1600. And you can see here that my exposure settings are a little bit more even, but I'll take another photo. Again, it's a little bit brighter. And finally, if I go into my ISO and I set it all the way to 6400, I hit OK. I go and take another photo. What you'll notice is between the three photos, the last one I took at the highest ISO will be the brightest image. And that's all we're going to be doing for class today. So during class, you're going to go through and you're going to either photograph your partner or you're going to go through and photograph a subject. It can be an object that we have. I'm going to recommend that we do it in a dark area because that'll change the settings between the ISO images the most. But again, you want to shoot one underexposed, so a really low ISO. That could honestly be anywhere between 1 to 400. The second one should be in kind of the middle range. I would say that 1600 to 3200 would be a good range. And then your final one, you're just going to jack the ISO up all the way to the top and take one photo. And what we should see is 3 photos with 3 different levels of exposure, making sure that between all of the images that, like I said, we're keeping the shutter speed at 1/60, the aperture as low as it can go, and the ISO at those different settings.